Hey there folks, good to see you. Good
Hi.
to be together. We're in, of course, the second in our little series on prayer. And we're thinking a bit today, Jerome, about a whole prayer, the sense of the whole life of prayer. Prayer being about our communion with God, our relating to God, our sort of how we draw close, how we hear God's voice, how we find our voice in that relationship with God. And of course, you shared that lovely picture from Revelation 5 about prayers rising like incense, in the heavenly places within the throne, to the throne of God. It's just a beautiful picture. But so we're drawn into something. It's big. It's exciting. It's about whole life. It's about knowing God. Tell us, what is this whole life of prayer?
Yeah.
What does that look like? What's that all about?
Well, let me draw on that imagery from Revelation 4. So that's in Revelation chapter 5. It should be on your notes. And what you have there is this image of God in this kind of massive throne room, and it's and God is kind of doing all this activity. All this stuff is going on. God's kind of judging and ruling and sorting things out in the world. And what you have are these angels who have this censer, and on this censer is incense. And these incense we are still are the prayers of the saints, of all the people of God. And they also have these harps, which is kind of like symbolic, I think, of the worship and the praise that we're giving to God. And this praise and this prayer, if you like, the incense is like the atmosphere in which God is moving and is active. It's like if you imagine a fish inside the water, God is like the fish swimming in the prayers of the people of God. So it's not that God is bound by our prayer, or like he's limited to the prayers that we say. But for some reason, God has revealed to us this image that He likes to be active and to kind of work in the world, in the atmosphere of our praise and our prayer. And that's something I think God is inviting us into. And if we look here in Luke, as we were reading the Lord's Prayer, Jesus doesn't start it off by saying, if you pray. Well, sometimes, if you feel like praying one time, actually He says, when you pray, you should say. And inside the Lord's Prayer, we see Jesus saying we should be praying for our daily bread. So this is like an everyday activity. This is not just something that we do on a Sunday or, I don't know, particular feast days or whatever. This is a lifestyle. This is something which punctuates kind of our everyday existence. So that's kind of something a bit about what prayer is. It's joining in with God's activity in the world. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is.
Mate, it does sound wonderful. Now, so we've got this sort of big picture, the heavenly realms, us joining in. I mean, there might be some folks who just say, well, look, that's maybe a bit intimidating almost, almost a bit ethereal, in the spirit, in the spiritual, in the heavenlies. How do I get to grips with this actually? What does this actually look like for me? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I kind of imagine actually that it's very easy to imagine prayer, and I don't know, a prayerful person as a person who never really talks to anyone properly.
Like the monastery thing.
Yeah, just like in a monastery, just always praying, just like always telling people bless you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fun to do sometimes, for banter, but that's not a way to live, It's just kind of
For
like,
most people.
For most people, yeah, I should say. To kind of live your life kind of enclosed in kind of very rigid prayer structures. We can do that, but it's very difficult to do that, and I'm not sure if that's what God is leading us into. Actually,
for every person,
yeah.
Sure. For most people.
If we look at the life of Jesus, Jesus, of course, is the best example of a prayerful person, and Jesus is always praying. But we see him kind of eating with his friends, going on walks, doing his ministry, spending time with his family, with his mom, his brothers and sisters.
Eating together.
As we do. We love to eat. I'm sure Jesus would be at the back, straight away eating the pizza with us. And taking times to kind of seclude himself to pray. Going up to the mountain. So
it's quite normal life, isn't it? It's quite practical and
exactly,
earthy.
Yeah.
Right.
And if we're to assume that Jesus is, I don't know, apart from God when he's eating, or apart from God when he's spending time with people, that's not true. Actually, there's this whole thing as a life of prayer, but it's punctuated by these kind of more intense moments of going to the mountain to pray.
Yeah.
But it's not like he's ever distant from God, from the Father when he's living this life. So I think it's safe to say that this is about a posture of kind of of everyday life. That's helpful.
Yeah, I get it. And so it's an awareness, it's an attentiveness to God. It's allowing our rhythms of prayer to kind of work alongside and in and around our normal life rhythms. These aren't competing things. We're sort of weaving it into the shape of our week. Brilliant. What does this look like for you? Because presumably it's a bit of a journey.
Yeah.
Presumably we don't just hear this and then it's sorted. Presumably there's a sort of a next step. There's a movement into. What's that look like for you?
Absolutely. I think prayer is definitely a journey. But I would like to say it's not just a journey in terms of a forward trajectory, but actually we kind of have seasons of different kinds of prayer as well. So as a first Christian, my prayers obviously would have been well, maybe not. Maybe for you, they were super holy prayers. I don't know. But when I was first a Christian, my prayers are very simple. And I never knew actually that I could kind of say my heart's desire to God, or even not say anything at all, and just kind of be in God's presence, and that be a prayer itself. Or even just recognizing that God's presence is us throughout the day is somewhat a prayer. But as kind of alongside that journey, you also have different seasons of life. And I would like to argue seasons of prayer as well. Yeah. Sometimes when, I don't know, my prayer life is very exalting and I'm just like thanking God for who He is, and I'm ready, and I'm just kind of, and every time I'm drawn into prayer, it's a prayer of thanksgiving. I feel like I'm standing up, and then sometimes I'm just kind of just talking with Jesus like I am talking with you now. I'm just talking about my day, and that might be, it might not be anything particularly crazy or extravagant, but actually we're just kind of having a conversation.
So like different postures.
Different postures of prayer, if you like. Yeah. Standing, sitting. And sometimes I'm on my knees and I am actually begging God, would you intervene? I need your help. Could you please do something here? And that's a different season of life. And then sometimes I'm just on the floor just like basking in God's glory and amazement. Just these simple funny little things that look like ideas. But that's symbolic of the way that actually life has seasons. Yeah. God isn't expecting us to be praising Him like, full of life and energy and thanking Him all the time. Actually, there's sometimes we need to get on our knees and actually ask God for things, and sometimes we just need to pause and just recognize who God is. Yeah. And as we're talking about that acronym, PRAY, pause, rejoice, ask, yield. These are helpful framings for us to think about a life of prayer. It's not always the same thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It is a journey, but it's not always in the same direction.
I get it. There's variation, seasons of life, moments, and figuring things out together. Really, so helpful. Really great. Now, pandemic, post-pandemic, we're out of the habit of praying. We're struggling with prayer rhythms. What would you say to the person who just finds prayer really difficult? Yeah. What would you say?
What would I say?
Because it's not an unusual place to be at the moment, is it? Let's face it.
It's not at all. And it's not always easy. It's not. And I say, if you're struggling with prayer, if you're sitting there and you think, actually, I don't know where to start. I don't know, or perhaps there's something kind of inside you. It's kind of like, I just don't know what I need to say or do, or you might feel something. I'd say, firstly, just talk to somebody about it. Talk to somebody at church. We'd love to kind of get behind you, and we don't do this Christian life by ourselves. No man is an island, right? Yeah. So we are working together and we're helping each other, and we would love to support you in that. That could be someone in the team, but it can just be anyone in church. We can just talk about it.
Well, that's right. We're gifts to one another in a sense, aren't we? Our connect groups or friendship groups, and just let's don't get isolated, I guess.
Yeah,
is what
absolutely. Done. And if you're struggling in prayer, let's struggle in prayer together.
It's good.
And it's just wonderful. And secondly, I'd say, kind of on that point, I'd say something that's personal to me and I find really helpful. I do pray by myself, but I find when it's difficult to pray, praying with others really helps me. It really helps to kind of unlock what's inside me. And sometimes when I don't know what to say, having someone pray for me or having someone pray with me. I've got a little WhatsApp group. When I'm usually preaching or leading the service, I just message them and say, I'm preaching on Sunday, can you pray for me? And those kind of little things and those kind of community things are really helpful in just kind of moving forward, taking a little step further in prayer.
Hey Jerome, that is so, isn't that so helpful, isn't it? And so, like, we're invited into a whole life of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
This is, in a sense, the heart of reality.
Yeah.
This is about communion with God. It's
That's
about being present and playing our part in that very, that place in the heavenlies of worship and prayers rising like incense before the throne of God. And we're invited. God invites us in to that place. Yeah. It's a journey. We've got lots to figure out. But what an amazing invitation.
Absolutely.
Hope it helps.